After the Red Wedding, the Riverlands bled with sorrow. Robb Stark was gone, or so the world believed. But in a dark chamber far from the twins, deep beneath the ruined walls of a forgotten keep, a body stirred. He awoke to pain, a burning in his chest, a heartbeat that didn't feel like his own. His wounds were gone, the stab to his heart, the cuts, the blood. All vanished. He sat up, gasping, and saw her, Melisandre. The Red Woman stood before him, her eyes glowing with firelight, lips curled into a strange smile. "The Lord of Light gave you back," she said softly, her voice like a song and a threat at once. "He has plans for the young wolf." Robb stared at her, confused and angry. He remembered the betrayal, Walder Frey's grinning face, Rose, Bolton's dagger, his mother's scream, then nothing. He reached for a sword that wasn't there. "Why did you bring me back?" he asked, voice shaking with rage. "You are not the only one who was betrayed," Melisandre replied. "I followed a false king. I thought Stannis was the one. I was wrong. The true fire burns in you, Stark of Winterfell, but not only in you." She stepped aside, revealing a black stone egg on an altar. Cracks glowed faintly across its surface, red and gold, like veins of fire. Robb stared. A dragon? A gift from the Lord of Light, buried in ash and forgotten flame. It waited for fire and blood. He didn't understand it, but something deep inside him stirred. Not fear. Power. They traveled for weeks, hiding by day and moving at night. Melisandre said the dragon must awaken near death, in fire, in blood. Robb was no sorcerer, he was a warrior, but each night he dreamt of heat, of wings, of burning skies. He began to hear whispers in the fire when they made camp. Not voices exactly, more like feelings, rage, hunger, vengeance. At the ruins of Harrenhal, where thousands had burned before, Melisandre made her circle of fire. She whispered her strange Valyrian chants, drawing symbols with blood, and placed the egg at the center. "You must feed it," she said. Robb frowned. "With what?" She looked at him with eyes that saw too much. "With death, the blood of traitors, and your own pain." The next night, they captured a man, a Frey scout. Robb hesitated. He was not a killer of prisoners. But Melisandre said, "He killed your mother. He watched you die." Robb said nothing. He walked to the man and slit his throat over the egg. The fire roared higher. The cracks grew. More dreams came. Dreams of flying over Winterfell, of roaring vengeance, of banners burning. One night, Melisandre stood over the egg with her arms raised. "Tonight," she whispered, "it chooses." Robb stepped forward. The fire was wild now, almost alive, twisting in the windless night. The egg split open with a deafening crack, and then a cry. Piercing, high-pitched, ancient, a black dragon, no larger than a hound, crawled from the shell. Its eyes were red, glowing like embers. It blinked at Robb and crawled to him. Melisandre smiled. "He knows his rider." Robb looked down at the creature. It was beautiful, terrifying. He reached out, and the dragon touched his hand with its nose. A spark passed between them. Heat, yes, but more than that. A bond. "Winter is no longer your only weapon," Melisandre whispered. "Now comes fire." But Robb felt the change in himself too. He no longer dreamt only of vengeance, but of power. He saw the North rising again. He saw the Boltons flayed alive. He saw Frey castles turned to ash. But part of him wondered, was this justice or something darker? Melisandre only smiled when he asked. "The Lord of Light demands balance, life for life, fire for ice. You are his vengeance." But Robb began to notice something else. His wounds, they never reopened. He no longer bled. And at night, when he breathed out, there was no mist. Something had changed in him, something unnatural, something dangerous. The north had always been cold, but now it felt like ice on Robb's skin, like it rejected him. He rode beneath a borrowed cloak, face hidden beneath the hood of a traveller. Beside him flew a shadow in the sky, unseen most nights, but never far. The dragon, now the size of a horse, had grown faster than any beast should. It hunted in silence, breathed fire. When it hungered and slept only near Robb, he named it Nyrax, after an old northern ghost story Catelyn once told him. A name for something that never should have existed. Melisandre called it a miracle. Robb was no longer sure. As they neared the outskirts of the Dreadfort, old memories came creeping in like frost under a door. This place belonged to House Bolton. Now, traitors, the men who helped murder him, the men who wore his father's crown, his father's flayed banners. Robb's jaw clenched. They had no idea he was coming. The first to die was Sir Ronell, a knight of House Bolton. Robb remembered him clearly, smiling at the red wedding, wine-red hands clapping as his mother was butchered. Robb didn't let him die quickly. He dragged him from his tent in the night, bound and gagged. Then he waited until dawn. When the sun rose, Nyrax did too. The dragon circled high above, then descended in a thunder of wings and fire. The night screams echoed through the trees. When the remains were found, they blamed wildlings. But the second night, it was Lord Forley Prester, one of Tywin Lannister's lapdogs who feasted at the twins and toasted the Wolf Kings. Death. Robb tied his corpse to a tree. The body burned black, flayed skin carved with the sigil of House Stark. The direwolf's jaw stretched wide in defiance. Now, they whispered. Now, they feared. A shadow stalked the north, a ghost of winter. With fire in his blood, a whisper passed between the terrified men. The young wolf has returned. Melisandre said little. She only watched, amused, as the north trembled. "You see," she whispered one night, as Robb stood at a cliffside, watching smoke rise from a Bolton outpost. "They killed your body, but not your name. And now your name has teeth." Robb didn't answer. He felt torn. There was a sickness growing inside him, not physical, but something colder. Each time he killed, it got easier. Each time he watched Nyrax burn flesh and melt steel, he felt something stir in his chest. Pride. That scared him, because pride was what got Ned killed. Pride was what led Robb to the twins. On the fifth night, they came to Winterfell. Or what was left of it. Smoke still clung to the stones. The walls were repaired, but the heart was gone. Where once there were direwolves, now there were flayed men. Where once his father ruled, now Rose Bolton sat, cold-eyed, with Ramsay barking at his side. Robb stood in the woods, hidden by shadow and pine, watching the keep that had once been his home. Nyrax growled low beside him, sensing his fury. "I want to see him," Robb muttered. "I want to see his face before I burn it." Melisandre looked at him, tilting her head. "Are you still Robb Stark? Or have you become something more?" He didn't answer. They snuck in through the crypts, irony perhaps, but fitting. The dead knew him. They would not betray him. He moved like a ghost, silent, patient. Melisandre stayed behind with Nyrax. Robb climbed from the tunnels, moving through his own home like a stranger, through corridors that once rang with laughter and swordplay, now silent and rotten. He found Rose in the great hall, alone. The flayed sigil loomed behind him. A cruel joke. Robb stepped from the shadows and Rose looked up, calmly, of course. "Always calm. You're dead," Rose said, not standing. "We saw you die." "You saw my body die," Robb replied, voice cold and unfamiliar even to himself. "But death is only an end for those who believe in peace." Rose did not run. He did not beg. He only rose, hand resting on his dagger, but he was not quick enough. Nyrax came crashing through the upper window, wings snapping the air, fire erupting from its throat. The dragon lit up the great hall like a bonfire. Rose barely had time to scream, and just like that, the Warden of the North was ash. They found Ramsay in the kennels. Where else would he be? He screamed when he saw Robb, not in recognition, but in panic. He thought him a ghost. Robb didn't speak. He opened the kennel doors, one by one, and let the dogs smell their old master's fear. Ramsay didn't last long. When the screams stopped, Robb stood in the yard, blood spattered on his furs, looking up at the towers of Winterfell. His home. It was his again, but as the wind howled and the snow returned, he felt nothing. No joy, no pride, no peace, just emptiness and fire, always fire. Back in the Godswood, Melisandre waited beside the heart tree, its red leaves rustling like whispers. "You have what you wanted," she said. "Winterfell is yours. The North will follow." Robbie looked up at the tree. "They'll never accept me," she smiled. "Then make them kneel." Snow fell thick over Winterfell, but no snowflake dared land on the black-scaled beast curled atop the broken tower. Nyrax watched all, wings twitching at every noise, a silent judge above the ancient stones. The banners of House Stark once again flew from the walls, but now they were stitched with thread so dark it nearly looked blood-red. A subtle change, yet deliberate. A reminder. The wolves had returned, but these wolves had burned. The ravens flew that morning, carrying messages to every corner of the North. One sentence written in Robb's own hand: "Winterfell has been reclaimed. The king in the North lives." The North stirred. In Deepwood Motte, House Glover called it blasphemy. "The dead do not return," they said. "This is sorcery, a trick." In White Harbour, Lord Manderley wept at the letter. If it is true, then the gods are not done with House Stark. In the mountains, the clans sent wordless tokens, pine cones stained with blood, a northern way of saying, "We are listening." But others, the Karstarks, the Dustins, the Umbers, remained silent. They had knelt to the Boltons. They had betrayed their oaths. If Robb truly lived, they would face him as enemies. And still, Robb waited. He did not celebrate reclaiming his home. He did not walk its halls or kneel in the Godswood. Instead, he stood upon the battlements for hours each day, staring north, silent, watching snow fall on graves that no longer held the dead. Melisandre observed him from a distance, her fire glow. Eyes narrowed as she whispered her prayers. She knew he was not whole. Each night, Robb's dreams grew darker, not visions, not prophecy, memories twisted by something inside him. He saw his mother, hair soaked in blood, reaching for him in the dark. He saw grey wind howling in pain, chained and butchered. He saw himself, standing atop a burning mountain, watching all the North. On fire and smiling, he always woke with cold sweat, but no heartbeat. He hadn't felt his heartbeat since the night he rose. The first Northern Lord to arrive was Howland Reed, an old friend of Eddard Stark, thought half a myth by most. He came without bannermen. Without fear, Robb met him in the Great Hall, where Bolton's charred bones still stained the floor. Reed looked at him long and deep, then bowed. "My king," he said simply. "You believe it's me?" Robb asked. "I don't need to believe. The old gods already told me, but I also know. You are not the boy who rode south." Robb nodded once. "No, I buried him." Reed looked up. "Will you lead with his honor, or the fire that replaced it?" Robb didn't answer, because he wasn't sure. 2 days later, Lord Rickard Karstark marched on Winterfell, not with swords, but with insults. He stood beyond the gates with 200 men, demanding an audience, claiming fraud, witchcraft. "My sons died for the young wolf," he shouted. "I saw him dead. Now some red witch wants to play queenmaker again?" Robb walked to the walls himself. No crown, no armor, just silence. Nyrax landed beside him, wings rippling with heat. Karstarks. Men stumbled back, horses shrieked, some dropped weapons. But Rickard stood firm. "If you truly are Robb Stark," he bellowed, "then show me what justice looks like." Robb raised a hand. The gates opened, and Karstark was allowed in, alone. They met in the old solar. Robb poured wine, offered bread. Rickard refused both. "You think fire and tricks will scare me," the Lord growled. "I don't care if you're scared," Robb replied. "I care if you remember what loyalty means." Karstark laughed bitterly. "Loyalty. My house followed, yours into ruin. You marched us to war, crowned yourself, and got your men butchered, and now you come back with fire and expect us to kneel again?" Robb looked at him. "I expect you to answer for your crimes." Rickard drew his dagger, not to use it, but to test. "You're no king," he spat. "You're a puppet on a red witch's string." Robb didn't move, but the room grew hotter. The dagger in Rickard's hand sizzled. Outside the window, Nyrax raised its head. Then Robb stepped forward slowly and placed his hand on Rickard's chest. "You don't feel it yet," he whispered. "But your blood already knows. I am not a puppet. I am the fire you left behind." Rickard choked, not in fear, but pain. Steam poured from his mouth. His skin turned pale. He dropped to his knees, gasping, clawing at his throat. Robb pulled. Back Karstark collapsed, dead. No wound, no fire, no blade. Just dead. Melisandre stood in the doorway, watching. "You're learning," she said. Robb turned away and said nothing. By the next morning, the Karstark men had fled, and the north was awake. Some marched for Winterfell to bend the knee, others to challenge. But all agreed on one thing. Something had returned, not just Robb Stark. Something older, colder, burning with the wrath of a god they did not know. And in the shadows of the crypts, something else stirred. Robb began spending hours down there, not speaking, just listening. The statues whispered to him now. They called him by a different name, not King in the North, not the young wolf, but something far older. Azor Ahai, far beyond the snows of Winterfell, at the wall where cold ruled over fire. Jon Snow held a raven's parchment in shaking hands. "Robb lives," that's all it said, scrawled in northern script. The words were simple, almost careless, as if it were a casual update, a routine message. But to Jon, it felt like the world cracked. He read the letter again, and again, as if staring harder would reveal the lie. Robb had died, at the Twins, murdered, betrayed. The gods had taken him, and Jon had mourned like a brother and a bastard both. He had dreamed of revenge, of justice, but he never once believed he'd see him again, and yet the message came from Howland Reed, a man who did not lie. The next raven brought more. Robb had reclaimed Winterfell. Rose Bolton and Ramsay were dead, burned, some said, by a creature of shadows. The flayed banners had been ripped from the walls and replaced with the direwolf once more. But something was wrong. The stories spoke of fire, not snow, of a beast that flew, of a man who walked like a ghost, who never slept, whose skin was pale as bone, whose shadow moved wrong in the torchlight. And beside him always, the Red Woman. Jon knew her, Melisandre. He had seen what she could do. He had seen her bring death, and worse, to men who deserved more. Jon crushed the parchment in his fist. He needed to go home. But the North was no longer the same, not truly, and neither was Robb. At Winterfell things were changing. The halls, once dim with grief, now echoed with life again. Lords returned, oaths were renewed, fires burned brighter. Yet behind every toast, every kneel, there was fear. Not of losing the war, but of who led them now. Robb Stark, or what wore his face, sat the high seat. He spoke little. He judged swiftly. Justice was now fire. A man caught stealing was not sent to the wall. He was burned. A woman accused of poisoning her husband. was tied to a stake and left for Nyrax to sniff. The dragon only roared, but that was enough. She confessed before the flames ever touched her. Robb watched it all like a man apart. He no longer blinked as often. He did not laugh. He barely ate. When a small child dropped a tray before the high table, Robb stared at him for a long time, not cruelly, not angrily, but vacant, as if trying to remember what children were. The boy wept, and Robb dismissed him with a wave. Even Nyrax had changed. The dragon no longer slept near the towers. It slept in the crypts now, curled beside the stone of Lyanna Stark. Melisandre called it progress. "He grows into the fire," but Maester Vulcan whispered in frightened corners. "He grows out of the flesh." Jon arrived with only Ghost and 2 companions. The snow was thick. Winter was real now. When the gates opened for him, it was not Robb who greeted him, but the dragon. Nyrax stood on the inner wall, red eyes glowing in the cold, smoke curling from its mouth as it watched Jon pass. Ghost growled, but Jon said nothing. Inside the hall, the fire snapped and roared. Lords rose, they bowed, but Robb did not stand. He sat high above them all, shadow dancing across his pale face. His eyes, they were still grey, still stark, but colder, wounded, and distant. "Jon," he said, as if greeting a stranger at a market. Jon stopped in the center of the room, cloak dusted with snow. "Robb, is it really you?" Robb stood now, slowly, each movement smooth, too smooth, like a man who no longer felt weight. "It is," he said softly, "but I've walked further than death to be here. The boy you knew died screaming," Jon swallowed. "And what rose in his place?" No answer. Melisandre stepped forward. "He is the chosen, the prince who was promised." Jon shot her a glare. "You said that about Stannis." Her smile didn't fade. "I was wrong. Fire corrects its mistakes." That night, Jon and Robb walked the battlements. They spoke little, only wind between them. Jon finally said it. "You're burning the north." "They betrayed us," Robb said, voice flat. "They slit my throat. They stabbed my mother. They feasted under our banners and spilled Stark blood in a hall meant for peace. That betrayal must be answered." "With dragon fire?" Jon asked. "If needed." Jon turned to face him. "I know what vengeance feels like. I've bled for it. But you're going too far. The North needs hope, not fear." Robb looked at him now, truly looked. "You didn't see her die, Jon. You weren't there. Her screams haunt me every night. Her blood was warm on my face, and then it wasn't. And they laughed." Jon touched his arm. "You're not alone. I came back too. I know the emptiness. But—" Robb pulled away. "You came back because the gods had mercy. I came back because fire demanded a weapon." The next morning, a message arrived from King's Landing. Queen Cersei demanded fealty. Robb stared at the letter, then burned it without a word. Jon spoke after the ashes fell. "She won't ignore you forever." "I hope she doesn't," Robb said. "I want them all to come north." Jon frowned. "Why?" "So I can send them back as smoke." In the crypts that night, Robb stood alone. Nyrax coiled behind him like a silent sentry. He stared at the statue of Eddard Stark, hand resting on the cold stone. "Father," he whispered, "what would you have done?" The crypt was silent. Then, maybe it was wind or madness or truth, he heard it. "Not this." Robb turned, but the shadows held only silence. Still, the fire in his veins raged louder than ever. In the skies above Dragonstone, black wings tore through the clouds, riding thunder and storm. Daenerys Stormborn stood on the cliffs. As Drogon descended beside her, his massive wings folding like sails. Rain slicked her silver hair to her cheeks, but she didn't flinch. Her eyes were fixed on the raven scroll in her hand, a message sent not from Westeros's southern lords, but from a frightened sailor who fled White Harbor. "There is a dragon in the north," it said, "and it bends to a man wearing the skin of Robb Stark." She read the scroll again and again, her expression unreadable. At her side, Tyrion paced. It's a trick. Sorcery. The North is a wild land. They'd believe anything if it comes wrapped in wolfskin and fire. But fire isn't northern, Daenerys said softly. It's mine. Tyrion turned. If he is alive, if he has a dragon, he may be more than just a threat. He's a rival, Daenerys said, and rivals must kneel or burn. Back in Winterfell, the snow came heavier now. White cloaked the land, but the halls of the keep were always warm. Unnaturally warm, fed by something deeper than firewood and torches. The air inside buzzed with energy, as if something ancient had awakened beneath the stones. Robb sat in silence, watching flames crackle. Nyrax sleeping beside the hearth like a beast pretending to be tame. Across from him, Jon paced. She's coming, Jon said. Daenerys, 3 dragons, thousands of unsullied, more power than the North's ever seen. Robb didn't react. Jon continued, frustrated. She's not your enemy. She has dragons. So do you. That's why she won't accept. Me, Jon frowned. You're both fighting for the same realm? Robb finally looked at him. His voice was calm, but it carried weight, like stone cracking under ice. She fights for a throne in King's Landing. I fight for ghosts buried under northern snow. You still think we're the same? Jon didn't answer. That night, Robbie stood in the crypts again, whispering names like prayers. Catelyn, Talisa, Grey Wind, Ned, every name carved into his soul like a scar. Behind him, Melisandre watched, not like a priestess anymore, but like a keeper watching her weapon grow teeth. You are not made for peace, she said softly. The Dragon Queen believes in mercy. She will show you none. She'll try to bend the North, and you will break before you bend. He didn't deny it, because she was right. 2 days later, Daenerys landed at Moat Cailin, her dragons screaming in the wind, her soldiers planting banners on the same soil that had once soaked Robb's blood. She didn't declare war. Not yet. She sent Jon back as her envoy. Robb met him in the Godswood beneath the red-leafed heart tree. The snow had stopped and the air felt still, too still. She wants to speak in peace, Jon said, to meet you at the Trident. No armies, no fire, just words. Robb's eyes never left the weirwood's face. The last time I came south, I died. She's not the Lannisters. She's not Walder Frey. She's not Stark blood either. Jon stepped forward. She wants to unite Westeros. You should be part of that. I'm not part of Westeros anymore, Robb said. I'm what Westeros made when it bled me. They met by the ruins of Harrenhal, where fire once swallowed kings. Fitting, Daenerys came with Drogon soaring above, and Robb arrived with Nyrax curled tight to his heels. The dragons hissed at each other, not yet enemies, not yet allies. Just 2 weapons sniffing the air for threat. Daenerys stepped forward. She was regal, silver and red, fire in every word. You carry the name of Stark, but your blood is twisted. Now, I smell fire in you, Robb nodded, and I in you, but I didn't come to bend. She tilted her head. You deny the realm unity? I deny it false peace. I remember what unity cost my mother, my wife, my child. Her eyes darkened. I'm not your enemy. Then don't act like one. Tension snapped in the silence. Drogon shifted. Nyrax growled. For a heartbeat it seemed the world would end in dragonfire, but Jon stepped between them. This isn't the war, he said. The dead are. That night Daenerys and Robb sat apart, but spoke again, not as rulers, but as orphans of war. They shared wine, grief, memory. Daenerys spoke of Viserys, of Khal Drogo, of her child who never saw the sun. Robb spoke of Talisa, of Grey Wind, of the crown that broke him. You were a good man once, she said. Robb looked into the fire. Good men don't rise again. Something else does. She reached for his hand. You don't have to become what they fear. He pulled away. I already have. But something else stirred in the dark. Melisandre felt it before the fire cracked. She woke from sleep with a gasp, her eyes wide. "The ice is coming," she whispered, "and it hates the fire in him." Beyond the wall, the White Walkers moved again. But they no longer followed old paths. They followed the smoke rising in, the north, drawn to it. Drawn to Robb, because the Lord of Light's flame had touched the wrong soul, and ice never forgets its enemies. It began with silence, not the kind that follows battle, or sleep, or death. This silence was deeper, old, ancient, like the breath held by the earth before it screamed. The trees froze overnight, branches snapping like bone under the pressure. The rivers turned to glass, and the wolves in the woods stopped howling, and from the farthest point of the haunted forest, they came, the White Walkers. Robb stood on the battlements of Winterfell as the wind began to shift. The air was too sharp, even for a northern winter. It cut through skin like knives, but he did not shiver. He didn't feel cold anymore. Melisandre was already waiting in the godswood, arms lifted to the sky, chanting to flames that refused to stay lit. "They come. I'm for you," she whispered to the dark. "They've smelled your fire too long." Robb entered the woods, stepping past dead leaves and buried memories. "You knew they'd come." "I hoped they would not. But fire burns loud. You are a beacon to them. A soul torn from death. Kept alive by flame, they come to snuff it out." Robb stared at the heart tree. "Can they kill me again?" "No," she said, and the fire in her voice trembled. "They can't kill you, but they can turn you." By morning, Winterfell was under siege, not by soldiers, but by silence. The snow had stopped falling. No wind, no birds, no life beyond the walls. Then came the horns, deep, mournful blows, echoing from the hills. The dead had arrived. Jon stood beside Robb on the wall, sword drawn, ghost at his side. "There's too many." Robb didn't blink. "We burn them all." "But they'll keep coming." Robb nodded. "Then so will I." In the distance, Nyrax screeched. The black dragon took to the sky, fire streaming from its mouth, lighting up the undead below like insects in a storm. The first wave of whites burned, but more kept crawling over their fallen. From within the mist he emerged, tall, silent, eyes like shattered frost. The Night King. He didn't rush, didn't speak. He just walked forward, his gaze fixed not on the walls, not on Jon, not even on Nyrax. He looked straight at Robb and smiled. Melisandre screamed from the tower. "It's you he wants. He's tasted your resurrection. He knows the fire has made." "You unclean!" Robb didn't flinch. "Then let him come." He turned to Jon. "Get the civilians out. Take what fighters you can. Hold the line at the godswood. If I fail, burn Winterfell yourself." Jon grabbed his shoulder. "Don't do this." Robb looked him in the eye, and for a moment the brother was back. Not the fire-wrapped creature, not the resurrected king, but Robb. "I died once for the North," he said. "This time I'll make it count." At the gates of Winterfell, Robb walked alone. No armor, no crown, no banner, just a man reborn by fire facing a god of ice. Nyrax landed behind him, snarling. The Night King stepped forward, sword of crystal in hand, frost blooming with each step. He didn't speak, neither did Robb. Instead, Robb reached into his own chest and pulled free the amulet Melisandre had buried in his heart the night he rose. It pulsed with ember light, cracks running through its surface. Each beat was fire and pain. The Night King hesitated. Robb raised it and crushed it in his palm. The sky split. Fire erupted from Robb's body, not flames from the mouth, but from within. His veins lit up like molten rivers, eyes burning like twin suns. Nyrax roared and took flight, fire exploding from his wings. The Night King charged, and Robb met him. Steel clashed, ice against fire. The sound wasn't metal, it was music of gods. With every blow, snow melted, ice shattered. The Dead screamed. Nyrax flew above, raining fire on the whites, burning thousands. But for everyone that fell, 2 more rose, and still the duel raged, until the Night King stabbed Robb through the chest. Jon screamed from the battlements, but Robb didn't fall. Instead, he held the blade inside, locking eyes with the creature of winter, then whispered, "I am not yours," and let go. The explosion cracked the world. Nyrax screamed as fire consumed everything. The walls of Winterfell shook, towers fell, ice shattered for miles in every direction. The firestorm rose into the sky, turning night into daylight, and then silence again. Real silence. The Night King was gone. The dead fell where they stood, lifeless once more, and Robb gone too. When the fires cleared, Jon walked the battlefield. Bodies of flame-killed whites surrounded him. Ash drifted like snow. In the center, only one thing remained, a melted sword and the burned husk of a direwolf banner. Melisandre stood beside it, her face streaked with tears. "Azor Ahai," she whispered, "born to end the night, reborn. In vengeance, burned in mercy." Jon looked around. Was that what he wanted? No, she said, but it's what the world needed. They buried what was left beneath the heart tree, where wolves once knelt and kings were made. Winterfell lived, the north healed, slowly. But sometimes on cold nights when the fire cracks wrong, they say they see him, a man in shadow with flame. In his eyes, watching, waiting, not as king, not as Stark, but as the fire that broke winter's back. And they remember him not with cheers, but with silence.